And the alpacas will get in formation there. The head alpaca in the middle with two wings, and they'll march on the dog. Right? And they keep spacing. It's perfect formation. The dog will get scared, back up, and the alpaca will stop.
It was pretty funny.
Well,
I'll get back here and let John take a nap.
call you Sue. What Grant do to his wrist? What Grant do to his wrist?
Oh, that's not much. I already shut my nose.
Ready to get started? We get the people up there. All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to start this off. I think we'll do a prayer, pledge of allegiance, and recite. Please. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for salvation, and we thank you for our great country that we live in. And we ask that you would protect our leaders at the national, state, and local level. Thank you for them. Thank you for the public servants that are here tonight, and ask that you give them wisdom as they go about tasks of administering for our county. And give us a nice evening tonight, and protect folks out driving on the roads. Keep them safe. In Jesus' name, amen. And please join me for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Done that 30 years.
I've done it a lot.
All right, first of all, I'd like to thank the Conservative Breakfast Group for sponsoring this and having cookies and coffee over there for supporting us the way they do. So, guys, thank you very much. We'll get started here. Yes, anything to say?
Yeah, just again, I appreciate everybody coming out. We've talked about trying to do these quarterly. We've got some tentative dates at the end, but I know the weather's kind of slick. Hopefully we didn't just get people that were rational enough to come out on bad evening to come. You've seen some of the town halls on TV of late. It's good to be in Elbert County where you can actually just sit and discuss what's important to us.
All right, we'll start through agenda, start through the slide presentation. One thing I do need to mention, which is really, I think I need to kind of indicate that Chris is one of the fellows together. These are technical experts, let me tell you really good. So Chris, thank you for the slides and everything. It's good presentation. All right, we start out with our agenda, our first 6 weeks. And we're going to cover a number of things. Yeah, as you guys can see it, we're going to speak to our goals. We're going to talk about the current issues we face, and then there's going to be a question and answer period, and then we'll talk about our future town halls that we'll have for everybody to attend, hopefully. So. Sworn in on June 10th. Right immediately after being sworn in, we ended up going to training. We were training for 3 days. Learned quite a bit. So, anybody want to expand on our training?
Just a good opportunity to meet other new commissioners from across the state. I think there are about 56 or so new commissioners at that. And really just a good introduction to state agencies that were available to support the counties and to meet each other. It's interesting how many, even though the details are different, the issues that most of us are facing are the same.
I have a little different take on it. I went in there thinking I was brilliant, come out of there realizing I didn't know anything. we've already been using some of that schooling when we approved the windmills and things like that. There's a lot of rules, regulations, and expectations that are codified in the law that really dictate how we are able to serve. And being able to serve with knowledge is useful.
I have one other comment. I went to the school. I've been there for about 4 months. I found out how Ron was doing everything. So it was helpful. So next part, get into the next thing was we changed the meeting format. And we hope if some of you have attended our meetings, we hope you've noticed that. More open, we're trying to, the term transparency, we're trying to really create that format. So,
Yeah, I think that the format that we've adopted, and it still has a couple little tweaks probably left in it, but most importantly, the comments we're getting from the public is they're professional, they're courteous. And then people go back and say, they're courteous. So, and we keep hearing that professional, courteous community remarks, and quite frankly, that was our goal. Or is our goal?
yes, it is. Second, the next component there is the notice time. Okay, folks have probably seen it. We're trying to post the information. We're giving people at least a week in advance to review documents that we're going to be reviewing. More discussion topics. There's many more things involved in our meeting process that truly allow people much more input. So, Chris?
Yeah, and I would just want to say on that, the cooperation from the staff, the other electeds, specifically on the piece of pushing the coordination time for meetings and getting public comment or public documents out early has been tremendous. I mean, nobody's been pushing back. I think a lot of it was nobody had really asked, at least from the commissioner level, just to make that happen. I mean, I know it's something that a lot of folks have wanted, and we heard about it a lot while we were running. But, you know, the reason it wasn't done had nothing to do with anybody, I think, other than those that were asking to have it done.
Really nothing to add. We have a consensus on this one.
We do. One comment I would like to add, though, I will tell you, as soon as we started, we had so much support from the staff in that county. That was truly what really helped us along. They jumped through hoops. In fact, one of the things while we were at the training, they were truly trying to reorganize our meeting structure, and we're doing it through the phone. So I mean, the county staff, the elected officials, and all the people that work for our county, they just stepped up and really kind of helped us with this whole process. So, all right, on to the next one. Rush Creek. Who wants to talk about Rush Creek?
Well, I said, this is our first regular meeting. It's nearly a $1 million project. It had been in the works for years before we took office, and we heard it on, I think, the 25th of January. So, but it was well put together. It will be a boon to the county, and it's sometimes not the prettiest thing, but it was well put together, and we're still working on pieces of it. There's some work with the state that they owe us on revenue analysis and other things, so we can properly budget going forward. But I think it's like I said, a big thing to handle a room like this on our first real meeting. So.
Yeah, my comment's a little bit different, as it usually is that at the public meeting, there were people from a different general area of the county, people from the L that were there. And that's a very rural area, as you all know. The people were very supportive of the wind farm. And the one thing that I enjoyed the most is almost every one of the ranchers and the residents from there spoke, and they all spoke to us respectfully. They supported the project, and I really felt that if this project goes off as planned, and I have no doubt that it will, that it is going to be a very strong economic boost for economic activity in that part of the county. There hasn't been any down there, and I don't know if you people are aware of it or not. Agriculture is having a tough time right now because of commodity prices and things like this. So almost everyone that was in the, that testified in front of us were very positive because it gave them another opportunity to survive economically.
Thanks, man. All right. County policy. Review and update on county policy. We truly, at least all three of us probably throughout our whole careers, we've been guided by policy. So that's one primary importance for us, developing policy, because that's what guides your organization. And that's been a big focus for us here. And I think if you've attended the meetings, you've seen how many policies we're running through. And it will probably continue to be that way because we will continue to work on policy for all the time. So,
Yeah, I got one. Is that this county policy? I've been the CEO of a couple of companies, and the chief operating officer and another one. And for me, policy has always been what I said it is. With county government, it doesn't work that way. So this is one of the times that I've got to really say that the breadth of the experience of the three of us being different, this is the time I have to be quiet and let them guide me because it's a unique approach to management that I don't have any experience with. Chris has been marvelous at writing some of these policies. Now, it's not without discussion, but I've really got to say, I'm glad he's here.
And just, I know we're a little slow off the mark here, but this is a policy board. If we're not in a publicly noticed meeting with an agenda that says we're making decisions, there aren't decisions made by the Board of County Commissioners, and we do that twice a month. So if we don't have good policy in place that guides the county outside of those meetings, then things can run awry. So that's where our focus is, looking forward, strategic thinking, and having policy straight. That's really our role as commissioners.
And I've got to say, we're trying to heal up some of those lax of policies.
Yeah.
all right. Our strategic plan. I actually will address this kind of through the slides. And the next one, the impacts of Gallagher. That one we'll address kind of later in the slides. And grant-funded studies and plans. We'll probably talk to that too. So, start it off. Setting county goals.
Okay, yeah, just through the election, we all talked a lot about strategic planning. I think probably Grant more than the rest of us, but we all were talking about the same thing. So, as we said, we were sworn in on the 10th of January. It's 45 days later. When you take out our 3 days of training and the 3-day weekends because the county's closed on Fridays, we've had about 24 days to start things moving along. So really where we started was just looking at the situation the county's in. What do we do? Why do we do it? What do we want our employees to think about what we do? So we've kind of set, we've got a draft mission, vision statement, what we feel the values of the county ought to be, and some priorities and goals set at our level. And then we're going to be sitting down. Those have been pushed out to the other elected offices and key staff, and we'll be sitting down soon to kind of bring those to finalization and move forward. So.
All right. Okay, the only thing I would add to this is this was also supported and requested by the staff, the county. They were truly looking and wanting us to develop this and work, because I think they have the same mindset as we do. They want to plan. They have goals. They have the objectives. They have vision. They have vision. So this came as part of their push to create this. So
Just at the end of the day, if we can define what we're doing, what our priorities are, we know we have limited resources. This is not a rich county. So how do we apply those resources wisely? It's got to trace back to what we've already decided you know, as a group, as a whole, what is important to them.
Okay. Setting county goals. As you can see, Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, this is,
read your,
we kind of worked through these, but what the three of us have decided is our proposed mission statement that we pushed out to everybody is that Elbert County exists to provide essential statutory services and supportive infrastructure to our citizens in a professional, respectful, and cost-effective manner in order to enable our citizens' success as individuals. We're here to serve you, and the two major areas we serve in are the services we provide and the infrastructure that we support. And ideally, our vision is that we'd be recognized by our citizens as the best place to live and conduct business in Colorado. And again, that we'd be responsible, effective, transparent, and effective to that. So that's kind of our working definition of what we do and what we'd like to achieve.
Okay. Next slide is actually what we value. And this is your values that throughout the county, you know, you go through, you can read through them. Chris, I think you had a lot to do putting these together.
Yeah, a lot of this was drawn from really a lot of what the three of us talked about and had published during the election. What we said was important to us within the county and what we were hearing from our staff and the citizens. So, I know most of what we wanted to do tonight was hear from you, so I won't read everything to you.
Yes, you can read those.
And we'll get this out available on the website as well.
Next one, setting county goals. This is essentially set organizational priorities and objectives, and I'm not going to read through them. However, what it deals with is if you set the goals, then each department and everybody within that county, what they're looking at, their plan, their goals, their priorities should align with each one, with one of these or many, depending on their focus, depending on that. And that's, you kind of lead backwards into effective strategic planning for the organization. You set the primary goals, then all the other departments can really look through and align with one of these goals for their department. So in the future, you look into, you know, different type of measuring and everything else. But this is the start of a full strategic plan for the county, the whole process. So,
Nope, we just need a strategic plan.
okay. Setting county goals, the next steps. So, we've already kind of planned it. I believe it's on the next agenda. The only way to truly effectively plan and develop a strategic plan for an organization is to involve all your leaders in that organization, all the department heads, all the elected officials. They need to be involved in this because this is their plan as well as ours. So they have the goals, they have the vision. So that's why it's so important that we work together to develop this whole process. So,
yeah, and I would just kind of say that the key one at the end is pulling this to a point where we can pull it into the budget process. Because otherwise, it's a lot of great ideas that sit on the shelf. If it isn't driving what we're funding in the future, then it's a waste of time and we don't really have time to waste. So,
that last component, assessing progress. Sometimes when you look at strategic goals, you can do it a couple of ways. You look at outcomes, measurements, stuff like that. That's why that component, that comes later, but that's still something we'll keep working towards. Issues. There was a few. Okay, first one we hit as soon as we hit the door, the Gallagher Amendment. Second one with had an aging master plan that we were currently using. Third one was water. And essentially, we'll touch on each one of these and where we're going to prepare us for the future. So, you want to take the Gallagher Amendment?
okay.
Okay.
It's I'm not going to go into details on the Gallagher Amendment other than to say that it was a voter initiative that changed our Constitution back in 1980. At the time, property tax rates were up over 21%. People, and they kept going up. People were in danger of being pushed out of their own homes because they couldn't afford to live there anymore. So this amendment was passed that essentially it set the assessment rate for all property that wasn't residential at 29%, and then said statewide, whatever is collected, 45, no more than 45% of that can be from residential property taxes. So the effect of that over time has been that the assessment rate that's applied to residences has dropped. It worked its way down pretty rapidly and then stabilized at about 7.96% in 2004. So, you know, like I said, from 21% down to 7.96, and then it sat there. Now, this is a statewide assessment. Our county obviously gets a lot more of their property taxes from residences than they do from commercial. It's about 69% of our property tax revenue actually comes from residences, and in total actual market value, our individual residences are almost 90% of the property value in the county. But statewide, that number now needs to be adjusted. So we've had, over the last few years, an increase in property value, residential property values of about 16%. Now, if this rate, the assessment rate didn't adjust, that would have brought a higher level of taxation on our citizens, and it would have brought about $1.1 million additional dollars next year into the county budget. Now, next year it's going to adjust down to 6.56%. That seems like, okay, it's 1.5% lower, that's not a big deal. But the difference between 7.96% and 6.56 is actually a drop of 18%. The assessors got an extremely complicated spreadsheet that kind of works through their best assumptions at this point. So where most people in the state were anticipating on the government side of reaping the benefits of property values going up, this adjustment pretty much stabilizes everything. Again, that's good for the people. It kind of hampers the budgeting process when you're projecting windfalls. So at the end of the day, what we're looking at going forward is about neutral. There'll be about a $68,000 reduction in what the county brings in revenues from property taxes versus the expected $1.1 million increase. So yeah, that does kind of throw off projections that we were looking at last year. A lot of things like the wind farm and other development may balance that out, and we'll continue to look at projected overall revenues from all sources throughout the year. As we get into the budget development process, we'll work with what we have. We're statutorily and morally responsible to operate within the revenues that we have.
Everything that Chris said is exactly right. However, there's a lesson in the story. Chris just mentioned that over 90% of our property taxes comes from residential rooftops. A little less than 10% comes from economic activity. Economic activity is valued at 29%, residents at 6%, or 6.5%. So what that tells you, if we're going to make this county more prosperous, have more money for roads, and any other activity that you want to identify, we need economic activity in the county. And I notice I didn't say economic development. Economic activity is the words I prefer to use because I'm not quite sure what that economic activity or the description of that economic activity would be. But as you can see, for each incremental rooftop, if it's only valued at 6.56, whereas economic activity is at 29%. Remember, rooftops don't bring any sales tax. Economic activity might, probably would. So, as part of the strategic planning, one of the things that I'm going to be arguing as effectively as I can is how do we identify and recruit economic activity for the county.
I'm not sure who you'd be arguing with. I'm not sure who you'd be arguing with.
Oh, shucks.
One more factor related to this is, we are under Tabor. This rate is set, and we can't raise it because it was at 7.96. When it dropped, it would stay at the 6.56 rate.
We would have to have an
We
election.
would have to have an election to raise the mill levy, or we would end up having to,
Yeah.
kind of,
And I would say going forward, that's important to remember because, you know, the Gallagher amendment adjusts this assessment rate down as values go up. If we go through another economic downturn, another bust in the housing cycle, we don't get to raise it to keep revenues level. They just drop. So the Gallagher ratchets it down. Tabor prevents anything from rising during good times. So it becomes a real critical factor when you're looking at long-term projections for revenue and what we want to do with the county. We can expect neutral or lower income. You know, the good times don't help that much. Bad times, we're protecting the people from raising the taxes. So.
future land use. We'll talk about, you can see some of this data. In fact, it's looking from 2015, we're expecting 70,000 people in this county.
Yeah,
Which is, there's a lot, it's going to take a lot to support this kind of population. We talked about the master plan, and the expert on the master plan.
Yeah, we've got two pieces going here, or we're working towards getting two pieces. One is the master plan update. It's the one we have is old. And it was, by old I mean it was prepared at a time when the population was much less. The planning concepts were probably different because in those days perhaps people's goals were 10 to 35 acre lots. Today, people are looking at different alternatives. The 10 to 15 acre. In fact, I had the planning department put together, I think there was about 1,500 lots that are already approved out there of various kinds. Some are large, some are small. But I'm kind of digressing here. Getting back to the master plan, we've got two pieces there. One is the master plan is what I call the heart and soul of planning. The rules and regulation, but it is not regulatory. Although we've had a judge that says it is, but it's not regulatory in the sense of the rules and regulations for zoning and planning. So we have to bring those two items up to date in parallel so that we can much more efficiently manage the county's projected growth.
Yeah, just want to point out that the county did, I mean, this has been recognized as a need for a long time. The matching grant is about $130,000 to $40,000 being put into this project. Half was put up by the county, half was put up by the state because they recognize the importance of having solid planning. There was a kickoff meeting for this on the 21st. The projection is to have this done. It's an aggressive schedule to have this done by November of this year. There'll be a lot more information being pushed out to the public, but there's a sequence of meetings that kind of build on one another. So those that are important, that want to be part of this process, want to have their input received. These aren't a meeting for Elizabeth, a meeting for Simla, a meeting for the Kiowa area. They're meetings that build on each other. I mean, the first meeting, likely be here in the exhibit hall, will be a presentation of our current master plan, what opportunities we see, what things have changed in the last 21 years, and a chance for input from everybody that shows up of what they feel is important for the future of our county, what we think should be areas where we accept growth, what areas we should protect, where we have resources that we're concerned about preserving. So that both individual citizens, larger stakeholders, I mean our school districts, our fire protection districts, all the people that have to provide services, our utility companies, they all have a say in what they can, in some cases, what do we want to see in others, and what can we support. The second meeting really pulls all that together into kind of an analysis of alternatives, a brief back to the people, what information was received, and what we can do when that's all consolidated, what that kind of looks like for our county. And then again, input from the citizens on which alternatives look better, what can we do with that. The third meeting is kind of, now we've solidified things a bit. These are kind of future plans. These are areas where we have to think about investing more time and energy in planning, more attention, or resources. So anybody that's interested in that process, I would encourage you to attend all the meetings, because you're going to see something build over time. I think the last master plan, there were a couple of people in this audience that worked on it. It took a long time, and it was all done by citizen volunteers, planning commission, and they did a tremendous job, but it took a long time. And putting things together quickly in a way that's rational, that's a way that we can publicize. The project manager that we selected has a website up. It will be public soon, so everybody will have access that has access to the internet. That's problematic in some parts of the county, but it will be a very open, transparent process. And even if you can't make the meetings, the ability to have your input put in and received and integrated into the overall plan is going to be there for folks. That's all I have to say.
All right. Rural water supply study. This study actually evaluates the reliable water source that we have for the future, and it is actually looking at this future resource out to 2050, and what it's doing is actually trying to analyze consumption through stakeholders that are currently using the water and future projections. And what they're doing, what this study is all about, is trying to forecast when we will, essentially what level the water will be, when we will need to start looking at other options to provide water for this county. This is something that is critical for this county, because everybody knows water is a finite substance. You need to forecast that, because it takes some long-range planning to prepare if you look at an ending source. So this study was funded with a grant, and I believe it was about $117,000. It was kicked off about 2 weeks ago, or about a month ago. And it's currently being managed. We've got a number of stakeholders actually involved. We've received quite a bit of data from primary stakeholders, and we are actually doing our kickoff meeting that will give us an update next Monday, okay, at 7 o'clock, I believe, here. And we'll give an overview of actually where we're at. We currently are on track with the plan to be finished in approximately 10 months from the start. So put us in somewhere around August. So it is a data-driven study. So because of that, it is highly dependent on the data that we get from the stakeholders. It truly is, the more information we can get from the people who are consuming water at this time and the future consumption rates, the more accurate the study will be. So that is the important component of this study.
Yeah, I just note that, again, time schedule in August the completion in August allows it to inform the final master plan that's projected to be done in November. So I know that we've had some questions about the sequencing, or how can you look at master plan if you don't know what the water is. Most of the master plan itself is kind of the living document that's updated, as conditions change, but in this case, the information received is going to feed that well. This was a win for us. $117,000 came from the state. We had to put in 20 to access that money, so it was a pretty good payoff for the county.
Another component of this study, sorry, I want to make one more comment about this, is that along with determining timelines and water availability, it also, it's in the contract it states that they need to provide 3 options on alternate sources of water. Different, am I saying that right?
I think they meant that they assumed 3 different plans.
3 different plans to depend to essentially obtain water.
And what the different levels of development might be.
Right. Based on 3 different low, medium, or high population growth. So, all right. The well monitoring study.
I'll attack this one. One of my degrees has a lot of reservoir engineering involved in it, and I find this particular study fascinating in that the measurement of the hydraulic head or level in the various wells have indicated that the recharge into the reservoirs that are being tested is at least equal to or greater than the withdrawals. So that's very fascinating. So the one thing I caution you about when we look at this information, the reason the increase in the hydraulic level of the water is up at 0.8 of a foot may have something to do with what happened 150 years ago, because the water takes time to travel through the reservoir. But it does tell you that, at least at this time, whatever the ingress of water from whatever the recharging source is at least equal to or greater than the current withdrawals of all of the wells that are being tested.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a very good thing.
It's kind of hard to see on the map up there. 41 wells are indicated. They stretch across the entire county, and they do tap into all the aquifers. One thing on both of these studies that needs to be noticed, the Water Advisory Committee has done an awful lot of work to bring these grants into us. Again, this one's a little lower funded. The funding for this initial one ends in September of 18. And we'll start there on future funding. That's something that we have committed to continuing this monitoring. Going forward, its price is relatively low compared to the level of information we get and the ability to actually see over time what our water is actually doing. We can study, we can look at gas data, but actually several, it was set up to do 30 wells initially. We got 40. Most of those have electronic transducers, so we can get almost real-time monitoring the fluctuations. But what we're really going to need is multiple years, if not just perpetual, just to see what is actually happening with the water levels below our county. We share, you can see this little map. The 5 aquifers we draw from, Elbert County is only 4% of the usage of this aquifer system. So we could stop today, draw any water, and 96% of it's still going out. So what's going on underneath our feet is what we're.
And what Chris just said is absolutely right. If you go back a couple of slides, the growth and development slide, one of the comments that we didn't hit the bullet point was rapid growth outside our western border. I don't know how many of you driven up Flintwood Road the last few weeks. You'll see there that there's huge developments going in there. And my wife told me not to say this. I said, that's going to lead to border wars. And she said, what do you mean border wars? And I said, well, we're going to be competing for the same water source. And so it's one of those things that we can't look at this in a vacuum. We've got to look at this, and I think Chris just said it right, is we're a small piece of a big pie.
Okay, space to serve the public. essentially our workspace. As you can see, we're struggling with workspace. We have, and as you can read through and I don't know if you've been in the county recently, but I've been there now for approximately 6 months, and when you come in, you can see the waiting area in the hallway. Sometimes they're back there, they're all the way down to the doorway for motor vehicle. We've ended up having to actually put attorneys in offices so that we can accommodate 3 commissioners who are there, which is a good thing. We need more office space for any type of growth we're looking at, whether in whatever divisions. We're really bumping up against an issue with the coroner. Statutory requirement is that the coroner has office space. We do not have that at this time. So we're required to have office space and also a place to put bodies. So that is an issue. Currently we have, I don't know if you've been through community development, CDS office. They're in the basement, actually housed partly in a safe, where we've had some issues with water and so at this point we truly we're looking at where we can grow, where we can get some more space, where we can possibly purchase space to grow this county. And then that brings up our
Okay, just, this is Kiowa. We're sitting in the fairgrounds, the oval just below HHS. Courthouse is, way back. So HHS up here, courthouse, we're sitting up in this area. But, you know, Justice Center down here, so kind of this is kind of the footprint of our service area, our ability to serve the public when they come down. So what we've been looking at, and it's been in the papers, we've been talking about it some, is the old Bank of the West building up at the east end of town, about the same distance as HHS and the Justice Center from the courthouse. It's a facility that meets our needs. It's about 10,000 square feet. It meets our future needs. And if you look around Kiowa and this area where people come to get county services, there isn't an awful lot like that around. So just, if people have heard about the bank building and you're not from Kiowa, that's where it's at.
Yeah. $500,000 is going to put away for our first finance on the Justice Center. When we refinanced that bond, we ended up, that money actually became available only for a capital purchase. And it's still, we still have that requirement, is that it has to be invested in capital. There's significant penalties if we utilize that money in different ways, turn it into cash. It has to do with essentially our asset to debt ratio is what it deals with. And that's why
It's a covenant in the bank, in the bonding agreement, that we have to maintain a minimum level of debt to equity ratio. Capital to debt, I'm not sure.
I know some folks have asked why don't we use it for roads? That's the capital. And now, since it was part of our capital when we made the new loan with the Justice Center, they're okay with us keeping it in cash because if we default, they can take our cash. They're okay with sending it on a building because they can foreclose and take a building back. But if we pay roads with it, they can't take our roads back from us. So it can be used or it can be saved, but it can't be used on something that a bank can't take from us. So if that answers that question, and then just a note here, we are spending nearly $6 million on roads this year. So I'm not saying $500,000 more on roads would be a good thing, but it's just not something we can find in roads.
Several of the public have contacted one or all three of us and said, well, why don't you just remodel the existing courthouse? And so a couple of us have called friends that do that kind of stuff. And the word we get is, don't do it. And the reason you don't do it is it was built at a time when asbestos stuff was used. It was built at a time when lead paint is everywhere. The amount of hazardous opportunities that could exist, and opportunities isn't the right word, danger is a better word to use. I don't think we want to open that box because the capital cost, I've talked to a couple of people that have taken those old buildings down there at Laramie Street and they said the only way to do one of those is just to basically gut it and start over again. And you have to have, and the comment I had was, you got to worry about hazardous stuff. And if you ask me what stuff is, I don't know. Their words is stuff because you don't know. And then the other thing is, I don't know if any of you have walked into any of the offices there and looked at the electrical outlets. Most of them have got a cord with six plug-ins in it, and the last plug-in has another cord with 6 on it. So what I'm getting at is, it's almost impossible to estimate what the real cost is. And I know that we've listed a cost here, and Danny was the one who got these numbers, I believe, but the whole point is, who knows? It's terrible management to open the door of the who knows contract, because it could be anything.
Actually, the figures we state here for the current remodel, based on today's standards, and what it would cost you to remodel a current structure, we're looking at anywhere from 150. If you don't have any associated issues, and I have this experience because we had to remodel my previous employment, we remodeled a lot of different places. You look at $150 a square foot. If there are any associated issues such as mold, such as asbestos, that just adds on to those costs, and that also increases the time. Then you calculate in, okay, what are you going to do with the people? How are you going to conduct business while you're doing this construction and mitigation? So truly, when you start remodeling an old building, it gets expensive. The problem is, I would be good with remodeling. However, you start with 3,000 square foot before, you end with 3,000 square foot before. You may section it off slightly differently, but you have a little more investment. You don't have a lot more. You increase the value slightly. So it was a kind of like, did some research on it because that was an option at the time. But we don't think it's a valuable option for us. I think other opportunities might surface for that. Let's go build new. We've got 1.6 million. Last structure we constructed, we were looking at approximately $450 a square foot. It was $4.5 million for a 10,000 square foot building. And that's under the commercial construction techniques and all the associated requirements you have. And we talked about architectural, we talked about civil engineering, to bring in all these designs. To build a commercial building anymore is fairly expensive, very expensive. And that was in cost, I would say, about 8 years ago. So I don't know what those equate to now, but a new structure would be kind of expensive for us. So I don't know that that's an option. I sure would like it, but I don't know if it gets there.
And I think at the end of the day, $500,000 is a lot of money to me. It's a lot of money to our taxpayers. It represents 1.7% of our total expenditures for this year. So putting that amount of money out to posture ourselves for the future in a longer period, again, pretty good chunk of money, but relatively small compared to everything else that we're supporting across the county just in this single year. And as for electrical outlets, I counted, I don't know what my office has been used for over the last 100 years, but I've got 32 different outlets in my office, so I don't need many extension cords.
Well,
32 outlets.
there's a firefighter walking through that building and look at all this stuff, the wiring. Anyway, all right. Anything else on that?
I guess the only other comment was is that it's on public record that we're looking at the Answer West building. We still haven't signed a contract. The contract that we're reviewing has multiple outs. So here's what the situation is, and many of you in here have done real estate transactions. The contract just basically sets out the rules under which you will do your due diligence. After the due diligence is done, I would suspect, I don't know, because we haven't seen the due diligence yet, and there's no point in spending tens of thousands of dollars on due diligence until you know that if you do it and you have an agreeable contract, that you've got a deal. So we're busy putting together, and I see Ed at the back here, where we're listing the expected due diligence, and once we get the numbers from that due diligence, then the real negotiations begin. And so what people that come to us, and I think that, to me anyway, I think to the other two gentlemen here, is that they assume that there's a preconceived outcome. There's not a preconceived outcome. We're exploring an outcome, but the engineering, the due diligence, the appraisal, an agreement with the town of Kiowa, all sorts of things still have to be done. They will be done before we negotiate if we do, negotiate a closing price. And I haven't said anything that's very insightful. Every commercial real estate deal is done this way.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, this is just one of dozens of issues that we're looking at to posture the county for the future. The bank building represents an opportunity that addresses some of those issues. So we'd be foolish not to consider it and see how it turns out.
Okay. We still have work to do.
Yeah, we can. Questions? Okay. Now, this is your part to talk. So, if there's any questions out there, if anybody would like to come up and ask us anything, we can roll. Anybody there with questions? Hey, Bob.
Hey guys, thank you very much for running and being elected. It's not a small thing, but you stood up and other people around, including myself, included, complained about things. You guys are the leaders that stood up for us, so I appreciate that. Grant, you talked about improving commercial development, increasing jobs and economic activity in the county. One of the constraints on that is the ability of transportation in and out of the county. We have just a handful of arteries that flow basically all through Douglas County into the greater metropolitan area. Could you guys address, do anything with Douglas County to improve those access points? How are you guys going to approach that as we move forward through developers or through agreements with other counties? Thanks a million, guys, for having this meeting today.
Thanks for the question. I guess the best way to initiate an answer to you is that you can't solve a problem until you identify the problem. So, and at least in my mind, the identified problem is the ratio between residential and commercial activity is out of whack. So now then the question is, what can we do about it? Can we enter into some intergovernmental deals? I don't know. What we've got to do now is we've got to figure out what do we have to offer. We've got to go out and figure. For example, we just found out I found out last Tuesday or Monday, I forgot which, is that Elbert County is a part of an international development zone. We're also in well, you laugh. But, you know, we have opportunities for European companies to have warehouses out by Lyman on the Elbert County side. And I'm pulling stuff from the air, but I think that we have a consensus that we need to address this issue, figure out what we've got to offer, figure out how to identify the people that could use what we have, and then recruit them. Now, basically what I described is the obvious, and but we've never done it before. So it's on our list. It'll be something that be written into our strategic plan. How we finance perhaps an economic development person, and how do we determine and acquire the resources that are out there. We're just starting. And your point, and you and I had a talk about this before, where you said that somebody wanted to come and put something in here, but they needed 2 paved outlets out of the county for safety reasons. Well, when that happened, that was before the Kiowa Bennett Road was paved. So I don't know. All I know is we must do it, we must get to work, and it must be a part of our strategic thinking. I don't know if I answered your question or just made a speech.
It's all good, brother.
But your comment on the transportation network, we have what we have, and I think our first steps is how do we maximize the benefit of that. I mean, we've got a big stretch of I-70 that runs through the county. It's got a rail line. There's some things that are right for transportation, warehousing, distribution type things. It's how do we encourage that growth and then benefit from that to improve the network working westward. It's kind of odd in this county to have something that's not on the western edge working east. But that's one on the eastern end that could benefit all of us. Lincoln County's got a public-private economic development council. Part of it's funded by membership from local businesses with a kicker from the county. They've got some policies for economic development that look interesting, but you know, you always have to look carefully when you're offering money you don't have to bring in people that might not do anything. So you know, you got to take that carefully. There have been some decisions in the past that hope to spark economic activity. Exceptions from our sales and use tax for renewable energy components was one. At the time it was done with good faith that if we made it cheaper for people to come in here and do something, they'd do it. At the time it was done, nobody was doing anything because the economy was in the toilet. Now it's come back, and we got this nearly $1 billion wind farm. A whole bunch of that is renewable energy components, and they would have built it here whether or not we accepted them or not, but it's in our local law now. And it's unfortunate because there's a windfall from that. It's no pun intended, but they were going to build here because there's wind here. And they're building it a little more cheaply than they would have otherwise, but I think they would have, you know, a 1% incremental cost on their material probably wouldn't have stopped them from looking at Elbert County. But so we've got some decisions that were made in the past with good faith that didn't benefit us now. So we just got to look at the structure there, and if it's something that might be coming back to the people to say, hey, we maybe didn't get this right as a county the first time around. So.
And we're getting that with the example that Chris just mentioned, because that was exempted, it's left several $1 million on the table, and that benefit has been lost. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I like to think about is correcting that imperfection in our sales tax. Because the only people that will pay it are windmills, oil companies, and pipeline companies. None of the local residents will be impacted by it. So coming back to it, I think I'm taking too long.
One other comment on your spot. You've got that Western Elbert County Transportation Plan. Now, in that plan, it identified a lot of funding sources to improve our roads. One of the things we need to do is it's outdated at this point. And it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
That's one thing we have on, kind of on the radar to complete, is because that could also identify different funding sources for road improvements, for just what you're specifically talking about. So that is something that we have to work at also. So,
And expand it to a Elbert County.
full Elbert County.
Yeah.
We probably need to go on to the next one.
Yeah.
We should. All right, next question. Sorry, folks, a little wordy. Apologize. Frank.
Do you need us to take a picture of it?
Questions. One is that I think we all agree that in order to maximize the funding for the county, we need to improve our business plan. With the Gallagher amendment, the 16% increase in assessed valuation results in pretty much a flat tax to the individual. Now, we pointed out that business, on the other hand, continues to pay 29%. And if their assessed valuation goes up, that's going to be quite a deterrent for business in Elbert County, I would think. And unless you have, that's a question. So if you have an idea, it will this, I guess, increase the cost to businesses for their property tax.
On that business side, though, you have to look at it in total for the state. All counties will be taxed at the same rate on the business side. So if it's in Arapahoe County, El Paso County, Lincoln, whatever economic activity or businesses they have will also be valued at the 29% level. So it's, as it relates to our economics, it's not the competition for location, which I think you're implying, because each county or city will, on the business side, be valued at the same rate.
So we have the same tax rate, however, a business in Douglas County may not cost the same as a business in Elbert County, especially if you take into account the business potential. So anyway. And I think we need to have as much incentive as possible for business, because I think that should be a priority. Now, the other question, second question has to do with water. I have a question of, there's talk about long-term planning and all this potential pipeline. It's my understanding a pipeline can actually work two ways. Is our commissioners pretty much able to prevent Elbert County water from being shipped out of Elbert County?
Yes, we have that capability to prevent it, but I would say that, as I was saying earlier, the fact that we are we pull 4% of the water out of the aquifers that serves everybody means that our water is moving out of the county underground right now by development around us. But there is no plan to sell our water to anybody. There is a concern, a great concern, because we don't know how long our finite resource lasts. We've set what we believe is a 300-year availability for development, but we need, part of what the study that we talked about earlier is to determine how much water is being used, how it's being supplied, and then if we need to be looking at someday in the future, I do think it's a finite resource. Eventually we'll pull everything out from under the ground, whether that's 1,000 years from now or 10. I think it's a lot closer to way beyond 10. We need to know when that is so we can start making the planning and then the investment on how we can bring water in when and if we need water. I mean, those are not projects that can be done in a decade. You're talking decades of planning for something like a pipeline to bring new water in here. I'm not sure how long River Hess was, but there's no big water project that
We can always capture rainwater.
we can do that legally now.
That's good. I'll take it aside. The other water-related issue I see is that Elbert County is over several different aquifers, and different types of communities go tap into different aquifers, and that seems to make the problem of long-term planning a little more complex, especially with the kind of growth that we're looking at. Is this something you have expert input into?
Yes, I mean, one, as development applications come through, and we are dependent on state water engineers and state kind of rules on that to determine which aquifer they should go into, their estimated availability is, et cetera. So, I mean, some development, most of the individuals out this way are in the upper or lower Dawson, most of the bigger wells go into their upper or Denver. But again, that's not something that the three of us with our background in grant with this education and that.
But like the large development of, let's say, 900 homes that would pull from an aquifer that would not affect Elbert County so much, I would think.
That's my understanding of them.
And we've got to see the application. Then there's several layers to it. There's the 1041, as you know, and then of course there's the water determinations by the state. And however they set up the metro district, we have an improvement. We have an opportunity to approve each one of these things. So we're going to see several looks at what happens. And if they build a metro district, which I expect most developments will, you can basically build a fence around them in terms of what they can do with water. So we're very cognizant of the issue with the water. These two studies, the USGS study and the other one, are going to be helpful. And the determination by the state of what water is there will be helpful. So you're going to get lots of opportunities to present public comment on these things because they're going to be reviewed several times.
Evening, Commissioners. Justin Blossom, 2970 Sandy Ridge Road. I guess the question that I have is I'm looking for a broad view of what you three are planning as far as the county's disaster preparedness action, and what have you done already and what will be done in your view in the future so that this county is prepared for more than necessarily first responders, but large-scale natural disaster or other types of disasters that may present themselves in the future in this county.
I'll start off with part of the master planning process is a required part of it as part of our grant from the state is at the broader level risk mitigation plans. At the immediate level, in the last 24 days, we brought moisture tonight. So fire detectors are a little bit lower, but we have it's been a pretty good training ground for emergency management folks. Brendan, our last emergency manager who handled the flooding incident that we had a few years ago, once he got that well in hand, he was scooped up and brought up to Aurora to work in their area. His predecessor did yeoman's work handling the Black Forest fire. He's now working at state OEM. And Corey Stark, he's still working with us now from the state level to continue to beef up those plans. But at the planning level, the risk mitigation pieces that will be defined in that master plan are a good guide. And then probably at the local operational level, Alex, our new OEM, is getting his feet on the ground, reviewing the plans we currently have. Actually, I walked in this morning and I'll pass it on to Danny.
Funny you mention that. For the last, since I got there about 4 months ago, what they've actually started within the county is actually trying to update their emergency response guidebook. And that actually encompasses all the county buildings and many of the structures throughout the county. So they are quite involved in updating all of it, updating the type of response you would do, updating access, evacuation, essentially anything that results to emergency management. And they've actually, we're probably looking at completing countywide, essentially, response guide, probably in the next 2 months. That really, and that is actually being proposed and managed by staff with Alex kind of, and the sheriff and a number of people kind of in the lead. So with that, that's what we're doing locally. So, and then Alex is heavily involved in neighboring agencies and kind of creating those relationships with the areas that surround us, which is a critical component of emergency management. So with that, we're heading in the right direction there. I can see it. So
I really don't. This is one of the places where I have no expertise, and I'll refer to Danny here. I think you've been recruited by the emergency people to be
working with them. That's
yeah.
really
So, and this is another one of the things I want to emphasize, is that each of the three of us have a different educational background, have a different work experience, have different histories. And one of the things that has been very pleasurable for me, anyway, is that rarely do they rely on my expertise, but I sure rely on theirs, because they have skills that the spread of skills, that's what I'm trying to say, is something that is very beneficial, and is particularly in that we've developed a very professional atmosphere there, so that we let the person that has the most skill in any one area be our leader.
One other comment, and this is kind of an opportunity to indicate people who kind of play a major role in doing different things. Rick Pettit, he's been kind of a leader in trying to lead the emergency response and hazard mitigation within the county building. Also, Sean Parker has been heavily involved, along with all the department heads and everything else. So we've got a lot of involvement in this county, and everybody's been really energetic in keeping this going and producing something that will actually be beneficial for everybody. So
We probably need to take one. We've got somebody at the back of the room that's showing us a clock that we're talking about.
oh, I think we're getting, okay. We're at 8:22. Do we have time for another question? Or one more?
Here, I thought you were going to let us off the hook.
Hi, I'm Nick Mueller on that 3440 Wild Rose. And my question is, I think you said earlier that we had about 1,000 to 1,500 home lots. And I didn't know if these were located together on the edge of the county. Because Stapleton has its own metropolitan district where I moved here from. And they had an increased mill levy to help build things like roads. And so would that be a possibility of?
Yeah, you're asking two separate questions, in my mind anyway. One is the lots that have been platted. And some of them have got the preliminary plat and not the final plat. So there's about half or 2/3 of them are ready to go, and they're spread all over the place. Now, the second question though that you asked is something that we're exploring, because each one of us have taken it upon ourselves to go to some of the homeowners associations meetings in the county. And I'll tell you what, there's a couple of the communities that are exploring just what you said. And I forgot that, what is it, the SIA agreement, Special Improvement District. And they are exploring the idea that they would set up a special tax for their community to get a specific project done. And then if that tax was passed, then that would be bondable, and there would be a way of financing it over time. I'd have to say that we're in preliminary stages of that, but I think that it's something that's going to lead to a positive outcome. We're at this commissioner school that the three of us brag about, is there was a lady manager from a different county, that's how they do all of their, or essentially all, and of the road improvements that are through the special improvement districts. And it was hilarious because she said, if they don't pass it, we don't raise their roads. So I don't know if that's an incentive or a threat, but the whole point of it is that we're, as part of our strategic planning, is trying to figure out what opportunities, and we're going to depend, and the particular one I'm thinking about anyway, we're going to rely on the community to come and ask us to be involved. To get that special improvement taxation added there, it has to go through an election, so it'll have to, they have to get our I'm not sure what the right word, approve, I don't know if it's approval, but we have to get it on the funds back. And I'm sorry for my accent, but I don't know if I answered your question or.
No, that's perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, at the end of the day, we have the money to spend that folks authorize. There's some general good for the county that we can talk to, but it's a big county, bigger than many of the states in our country. So, you know, the needs on the northwest corner versus the L are very different. And, you know, if there are local improvements that can be done that locally people want to spend their money on, we can certainly assist. But, you know, it's hard to convince everybody in this county that there's one thing that's good for everybody because we have very different needs.
Okay, with that, I think it's kind of, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. Be careful going home, please. It's nasty, and again, I appreciate your participation and coming here. Oh, Fred, how are you today?
Yeah, we are looking at doing this quarterly. We'll move it around, looking in June, perhaps going out east to Semla, September and Elizabeth. If we stayed on the 4th Tuesday, we'd be on the 20th of December, so we probably won't do it on the 28th of December in Kiowa. Either tentative, look for them. And if any of you want any of us to come out to homeowners associations, other groups within our district, we won't step on each other's toes, but you know, just give us a call. Our contact information is out there. Just let us know if you want us to be there. There's lots of cookies and coffee, and we still have 3 minutes.
And we're at the